The Murder Shelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. This is episode 121, my interview with Arson prosecutor and author Diane Marger Moore. In our first episode on 16 Minutes, Was the Death of Baby Matthew an Accident or Murder, which was episode 118, I shared a bit about her, but I barely scratched the surface. So after graduating from the University of Georgia with her law degree, Diane has held various legal positions in both Indiana and Florida. As an attorney, she has experience in supervising, prosecuting, defending clients, and assisting the courts. Her areas of litigation include analyzing convictions to determine whether a currently incarcerated person is legally and factually innocent, which is a truly mind-blowing process, and it is badly needed. She's also worked in children's legal services, ensuring high-quality representation for juveniles, and also has cases involving termination of parental rights and family law. Additionally, she has extensive experience in insurance fraud, criminal and civil law, probation revocation, and obviously arson prosecution. Now, this is just a glimpse into her remarkable career. Really, the only role I didn't see on her resume was conducting prosecutions at The Hague for crimes against humanity. My admiration for her is immense, and she's far from finished. Currently, Diane serves as special counsel, which is similar to Assistant Attorney General, and is responsible for litigation in consumer protection and cyber fraud. Diane has been published professionally, and her list of works spans 2 pages in length, so impressive. Now, in the realm of true crime, she published Inconvenience Gone, The Short Tragic Life of Brandon Sims, which tells the heartbreaking story of a 4-year-old who vanished without a trace after being left home alone for a week, and his mother had no explanation for his disappearance. Diane relentlessly pursued justice for Brandon. And I've read this book and obviously 16 Minutes, and I highly recommend them both. No surprise. And I may circle back to this other book. Diane has also won a number of prestigious awards, sometimes in back-to-back years. Now, before we get into the whole episode, I have an announcement. So attention, everyone. I am going to once again be participating in Creators Row at CrimeCon Denver from September 5th to 7th, 2025. Woohoo! You can save 10% on your badge by using my code, all one word and all lowercase letters, Murder Shelf. So you just visit www.crimecon.com/CC25 to purchase your badge. We had an incredible time over the past 2 years at CrimeCon, chatting, hanging out, having a couple drinks, talking cases, and book suggestions. And I think this year's event in Denver is going to be the best yet. So stay tuned for more details as they come out. Make sure you're subscribed, and I cannot wait to see my murder bookies in Denver. Well, anyway, let me warmly welcome my guest, Diane Marger Moore, to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. Hey, Diane, I am so happy that you're joining me here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Your book captivated me. It's just, as much as I do true crime, it always astounds me the capacity for evil that human beings have. Every time, it's like a new shock.
Unbelievable. I absolutely agree with you. And the evil can be so intense that proving it to a jury, because they, like you, have a limited capacity to believe that people could do some things. And so when you're a prosecutor, you have to keep that in mind, that good citizens are going to find it really hard to believe that somebody did something like this.
Yes, and to such a tiny baby.
I know.
I still can't wrap my mind around it.
Yesterday there was a picture of somebody pulling a little baby out of some wreckage in Gaza, and that little baby immediately struck me, and I thought of, that baby's the same age as baby Matthew was at the time that he was murdered. I know, it's unbelievable. And I always think about how babies smell. They always smell. There's this wonderful fragrance of a baby.
Yes.
I mean, really. And that's not that's not the smells that I recall from this case.
No. I did not share some of the more graphic pictures that you shared with me.
No,
it's just
I
not
wouldn't think you should.
necessary.
No.
Suffice to know that this poor child, the book was so compelling and gripping. But I have to tell you, at the same time, there were parts where I was absolutely laughing out loud.
Well, I'm glad.
I can't say that happens often reading true crime, but it was such a relief, and I needed it because of the gravity of this case. I needed that. Was that designed, or is it just you?
That's just me. That's just my personality. And I think that we talk about how it affects the jury, but it certainly, for caring prosecutors, it affects you as well. And I think I had indicated in the book that I had young children at the time. So part of my life is adding a little humor to the situation, not the horrible things, but as you're going through, and at least laughing at myself as I stumble through life. And so, so that's me. And at my age, I'm still stumbling through life. So, yeah.
I think pretty much all of us do that. Well, thank you for those moments where I just was absolutely rolling. You are very honest, and I appreciate that too. But your description to some of your colleagues also just had me rolling.
The book's been out for a while, and I haven't been sued yet, which suggests
it's accurate. Mm-hmm. I just absolutely loved it. That part of it was wonderful. I also absolutely love Detective Leslie Van Buskirk.
Oh, and if you met her in person, you would still love her. She is incredible. And getting to know her, I think, hopefully you can tell from the book, was one of the good parts of the case. So when you talk about the horror of what actually occurred, but then I had the opportunity to build a relationship with a really incredible woman.
Yeah. The work that she did, remember, the case is 2 years old when you find out about it, on the verge of being dismissed, and you're like, no, we do not dismiss arson murder cases. No, we don't do that. She had, though, continued not dealing with your other colleagues, but she continued to do the work and the investigation and preserve documents and all of this that set you up to be able to go forth with this.
Absolutely. Good detectives. And I think people read books. I certainly read a lot of books. I've been listening to a Michael Connelly book. I love his writing, but his detective, Bosch, never lets go. And really good detectives are like that. They're cases that haunt you. And Leslie Van Buskirk, and I really did always call her Van B, or Van Buskirk, just is not the kind of person that would let something go where she had such a strong belief in what occurred and who may have caused it.
Yeah. Her passion for it and her use of descriptive language is so appreciated. Oh my gosh.
When I sent Van B a copy of the book, She said, now you do know that I only use that language when it's helpful to the situation. And I was going, yeah. And by the way, Van B also had a young daughter at the time. Our daughters are almost the same age. Van B, she was a former ballerina becoming a homicide detective in a very male world. Remember, that was years ago.
Oh,
yes. Who is beautiful and uses it to the advantage of justice. That's something major. Yeah.
Yes.
She's still working.
She's still working?
She's still working. She's a sergeant detective in homicide.
Oh, wow.
It was a year ago when I last spoke to her. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm glad she's still out there. The cause of justice is well served. Since you mentioned this, because I did want to reflect on this, you are becoming, your career is astounding. I said in my opening, the only thing I didn't see on your resume was prosecution of crimes against humanity at The Hague.
And that's something I have aspired to my whole career. I tried a case against what was a young lawyer then, Greg Keogh, who was just nominated as the U.S. attorney here in Middle District of Florida. Greg Keogh, after our case, went to The Hague to prosecute crimes against humanity. And gosh, I begged him. Of course, I was a defense lawyer, but I begged him to take me with him. And he, of course, laughed at me. But I actually applied a few years ago and never heard back. I would love that. But anyway, oh my gosh, we're both thinking the same way. It's the one thing that I would love to do. So if anyone from The Hague is listening, I'll do it for free. Just take me.
Just bring me in. I was actually at The Hague at a tour. It was a kind of a tour that I was on when Radovan Karadzic, who was one of the genocidal generals in Bosnia, when he was arrested and brought in. And it's a highlight of my life. I had spent time in Kosovo doing ethnic reconciliation work. It was
incredible,
a really...
Jill. You have quite a background too. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, we are going to The Hague in the middle of April because I've always wanted to see it. And while I'm there, I'm dropping resumes.
Yes, definitely do it. Drop cards, leave them around. That's fantastic. But reason we got into this is because you were a woman entering into a very male-dominated sphere and having to interact, do this, prove yourself as a prosecutor. You talk in your book, I call it being John Commond. He was trying to intimidate you. And
yes.
Your response was to laugh in his face. Oh, brilliant. I was sitting there as I'm reading this and I'm like, to this day, I'm like, I don't know what I would do. And it was absolutely genius. Can you tell me a little bit more about these kinds of things?
I became a lawyer doing criminal defense work in Georgia in the 70s. There was only one other female lawyer who did any kind of criminal defense. And the reactions were primarily, Miss Diane, what's a nice girl like you doing in this? But some were different, and you get used to it. And I think women, when faced with a powerful male, a Marine, because there's supposedly no former Marines, you have two options. You can cry at their threat of force, you can laugh at their threat of force, or you can try and fight with them. I'm definitely not the fighter type. Verbally, yes. But I just thought that his attempt at intimidating me was funny. I mean, who are you talking to? I am not a 20-year-old little girl. I'm a 40-something-year-old woman.
Good for you.
And so I did. It was just, I thought he was funny, and he was really taken aback.
Yes.
I must concede, years later, I think he changed his attitude towards me, but that doesn't change anything. And what's incredible is the cycles turning around. There were years that there were no real problems, and now, of course, women are facing similar issues. And I really believe that having confidence in your abilities, having confidence in yourself, and not putting up with a whole lot of bull is really important. And so I believe in that.
Good for you. I will say quickly, I'd had one boss he had an explosive anger disorder, and he was also very OCD. And he thought it was very appropriate to just unleash on people and just start yelling at them. And people tolerated this, and he had not done it with me. And I'm like, why are you tolerating that? That is not appropriate. It is probably harassment and illegal. Like, why are you putting up with this? Well, one day he came bursting into my classroom right in the middle of the class I'm teaching, and he unleashed on something, whatever. And I just said to him, I said, I'm teaching. We can talk about this later. And he kind of got himself together and he walked out the door. And the kids are all, mouths hanging down. I said, guys, give me a moment. And I sat down and memorialized it in an email. I said, at such and such a time, you came into my classroom. You said, blah, 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 in front of my students. This will never, ever happen again. And it did not. Because if he had done it again, I was not going to go to my superintendent and say, oh, he yelled at me. No, I was going to the police station and filing a report.
There you go. So I actually, also in Indiana, had a situation where a boss became very angry because he couldn't reach me. And when I came into the office, he shoved me up against the wall and started choking me. And senior staff saw him. And so I went down the hall, tried to borrow a handgun, which fortunately that person wouldn't loan me. He was a law enforcement officer. And I quit. That person denied it had ever happened, despite knowing that there were a number of witnesses. But it became political. I wouldn't discuss it with anybody. And so the political situation was half of a group wanted to use it against him politically. The other half didn't want me to say anything. And I was like, now you're all trying to use me. I'm just out of here. And I've been very fortunate that I've had the opportunity to move from one situation. So that's why people are scared. You knew you were a good enough teacher that no matter what, you were going to be fine. It's when they do it to people who have inadequate power or sense of self that they feel they've got to tolerate it. And that's when you feel trapped, and nobody should feel that way.
That's why I tell this story. I'm not telling it to aggrandize myself. I'm not so special. But you do not have to put up with this, even at work, especially at work.
Especially at work, and certainly not in your home situations.
Absolutely not.
Domestic violence seems to be on a dramatic increase. We're learning more about the extent of incest as a result of DNA testing. And it is terrifying. The children that have reported to their one parent that the other parent was abusing them and that parent didn't believe them, the effect that has on that child for the rest of their lives. It's horrifying. So, it is.
Just one of the things that people have to be responsive to. You have to.
Absolutely.
There's just no question. It needs to be investigated every time. I was going to ask you about why you abruptly resigned to that position, so thank you for sharing that with me.
Being a prosecutor and in that office where I had the opportunity, it was unique. I had the opportunity to screen and file cases, had the opportunity to have a strong voice in what penalty we would request. It was an incredible opportunity for me, but there were reasons that I couldn't continue. So, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I wanted to ask you, William Wise, you step in, you're not dismissing the case, you're going forward. Thank God you had that 3 month, you were granted that, it was supposed to be 3 weeks, you were granted that 3-month window to start to get yourselves together and, see what kind of case you have and interview your witnesses and all of this. And then it gets derailed. In hindsight, Was that a blessing? There's no doubt in my mind you had the case together and you were going to go through it and do it. But was it a blessing then it got derailed and you had a chance to, which is winds up being years, which was unfortunate, but to really put it together better? I mean, was that the silver lining?
I never thought of it that way. You're raising it really for the first time. One, trials are expensive, both financially and emotionally. You get people prepared and you're ready. And heck, in my case, one of my biggest fears was, what am I going to wear today that I won't fall on my face in? So I know that sounds silly, but jurors look at everything about the lawyers in front of them. I think in many ways it was, but not much changed before that situation and the next one. So it's always thought that the more time that goes by is an advantage to the defense. And the reason being, this defendant was not incarcerated. He was out there.
Yes.
Right? He was out there. The terror of what he might do to someone else, what he might do in the interim, what he was up to. So that's perhaps why. Now, if it had been a defendant who was incarcerated, it would have been different.
Yeah.
So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Certainly did have time to do things better.
Yeah. And then we get through the trial, which I thought you conducted brilliantly.
Thank you so much.
No, I mean, I'm listening to the defense. The case is over and done with. Other than being outraged by the murder, I don't have skin in the game per se. So I'm listening to both sides. And I thought the defense seemed groping, grasping, beat up on poor Leper and made him wonder what he was saying and confuse things a little there. But the jury then has the case. You're trying to have some lunch, for God's sake, and beepers go off. Oh, they have a question. Okay. Hightail it back to court. And are we supposed to have this information? And oh my God.
Well, it was heartbreaking and guilt infusing, because no matter where you are, and trials are exhausting. I mean, it's get up early in the morning, get prepared for that day's witnesses, stay in court all day, go home, try and hug the kids, but then stay up for several hours preparing for your next day. And the way that this particular judge chose to have all exhibits marked was confusing. Most judges don't do that, only the exhibits that are entered. But nonetheless, it was my responsibility to make sure that didn't happen. And both of us had looked at it. I mean, both the defense lawyers and myself, we went to the table, we looked at it. So it was pretty horrifying. And also, I think that I indicated in the book that this was the week after the O.J. Simpson not guilty verdict. And everybody was in an uproar on both sides of the issue. And here we are, the jury's sitting there and they've worked so hard and they're faced with go home, there's no verdict. It was bad.
I want to commend you for owning an error, because so many people point fingers and don't want to take any responsibility for anything. But you're like, yeah, this was on me. And I mean, we both looked at it because, the defense attorney looks as well. And things are being moved into the jury room and all these documentations and stuff. I poured myself a drink. Because while the case is long decided, and I said I didn't have any skin in it, I wanted a conviction. I thought the trial went beautifully. Everybody presents their information, testimony. I was like, oh my God, I felt it. You did well. I felt it.
Well, I think I talked in the book about the fact that I spent the next 3 days in bed with my curtains closed and ignoring the world. But I've never, ever since that time we as human beings learn from our mistakes, and unfortunately, we make them. And I can tell you, I drive courts crazy because I look at every page of every exhibit before they go back to the jury from that point on. And like I said, the courts are sort of, nobody really does that. It's like, I do that, been there, done that. So in civil cases as well as criminal cases, you never know what can be put in there.
But your reaction was so human. And I think we can all relate to that. We all make mistakes, absolutely. But it was just, oh my gosh, this was like the second time. Did you kind of feel you were cursed?
I felt like, yeah, the gods were not looking up at me. They were not smiling. But the lawyers in that case were very competent. Jimmy Voiles was considered one of the best, if not the best, criminal defense attorney in Indianapolis. He was very, very active in Democratic politics, which were strong in the city of Indianapolis at that time. And I guess the good news out of it was that they weren't involved in the case again, because I guess they weren't going to be paid. Right. And we did get some information afterwards that was essential and that really helped, I thought, along the way. And that was the contact with Wise's former firefighter girlfriend.
Yes. She was so critical. In my podcast, I try to answer that question, why? And it's very hard to answer because we even start out that way. Why would a father do this? And her testimony about William Wise and his fantasy to swoop in and make a heroic rescue, and that the fire department was just going to bestow firemanship to him. For me, it was click. I get it. I knew what he was up to.
Right. And his collecting all of this stuff. And then, of course, we were able to learn about what he had done in Florida and lied about. And we had that knowledge peripherally, but she put together why all of it was so significant. But of course, that always leaves the question about what about her?
Yes.
What about her? What mother? It's funny, we were talking at the beginning about if you're scared leaving your husband, but I spent hours driving or in the shower or whatever thinking, could I ever leave the house with my baby in it burning? And the answer was never. So I still go, what?
Yeah. I didn't feel I had enough information to really get into Matthew's mother, her head, to figure out what the heck was going on there. If I can say anything at all, I kind of think she was so glad to have any man, to have a man, that even someone as seriously flawed and disturbed as Bill Wise, it was better than being alone. Now, I can't go much beyond that one because I don't have enough information on her background and all of that. But I think that had to play a part in it. Had to.
One of the criticisms of a colleague who read the book was, well, not a colleague lawyer, but a friend who said, well, why don't you tell us more? Why don't you? It's like, hey, I've shared everything I know or knew or could find out. There are things we just don't know. And I can only speak for me as a parent. Never. And I adore my husband and I trust my husband. But you know what? Not going to happen ever.
Yeah. And
I think that, so I don't know the answer, but I will always wonder and think about that. It's sort of the, I'm just not comfortable. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. I'd really love to know really what she was thinking. She said at one point, well, I just thought Bill was going to get him.
And you go across the street What?
So I did a Google map
Uh-huh.
from Wise house across the street, walking. They said it'd be less than a minute. And then Bill Wise, who bypasses a house, knocks on the door, leaves, goes further down the street. That's a 2-minute walk. Now, granted, I'm sure these people are running because there's a fire, right? But it still is double the distance from her going to a neighbor's house to call the police and him, and 27 seconds. Did you think about calling the book 27 Seconds? Because I really thought about that.
No, the other title was Shark Eyes, because when you looked at William Wise, he had that unblinking black eyes. Goodness. But 27 seconds, I'll think about it for the next book.
So he went up the stairs to rescue Matthew, put on his fire gear, runs to one house, runs to the next house, and his call comes in to 911, comes in 27 seconds after her call. No way.
Yeah, no way. No way.
No way.
No way. And the after effects of what he alleges are why I spent some time talking about what the observations of the emergency responders were to him. But knowing that your baby is in a room with a fire and just leaving it, I don't get it. I really don't. I never will.
No, I never will either. It defies logic. It's your baby. He went up and retrieved the phone.
Yes.
The portable phone, which was on the right, and Matthew's room was on the left. And he went back down 6 whole stairs, but back down 6 whole stairs. What the heck? Yeah.
Yeah, it's, first time he was upstairs with the baby. There's a lot there, but it still was completely circumstantial. It still was challenging. If it wasn't for the insurance company doing the test burn, the proof would have been much harder. And insurance companies spending money that they don't need to, they could deny the claim and that was it. But that insurance adjuster, who unfortunately later had some serious problems, but that insurance adjuster couldn't let it go. And so he had the company spend the money to do that. And that was critical.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you show the video. You're presenting the state's case. You show this video, not the whole test room, just the video. Didn't want to overdo it either. And then the defense, this is in the third trial. The defense starts to show a video of a room erupting. And you're like, no, time out. I've never seen this before. What happened beforehand? And you just destroyed their case.
Well, there were a couple things. The defense lawyer, one, you remember the diaper. This young man, Mark Ernest, he's probably not young anymore. A good guy. He really doesn't like me, but it's okay. He was a young lawyer. He's trying hard. He's got some talent for sure and had it then. He's trying to show that if you pour a liquid on a diaper, that you're not going to get it inside. He must never have diapered a baby in his whole life because he has the diaper folded and he pours on it. Nothing. And I go and show, no, there's a baby inside. You pour it and it goes right in. And the same with their video. It's not thinking enough in advance about it. So they had gotten a video off of a TV show and they played a small portion of it showing flashover. What they didn't do, and it was their expert's fault. They should have questioned it much more deeply. When I had the opportunity to look at the rest of the video, it's like Paul Harvey, here's the rest of the story, and was able to show the jury that yes, there was flashover and yes, fire occurred, but everything was still standing in the room.
Which is the point.
Not in our room. Yes, which was the whole point. So looking into what experts are saying, One, juries are cautious of experts, but still, if it's an area that they don't know about, they listen closely to what experts have to say. And people tend to give up. Oh, that guy's an expert. I want to know more. How'd you get to that opinion? Where did it come from? Show me all the proof. And when you looked into it, it was all bogus. So, yes, I did enjoy that.
Oh, I enjoyed it too. I was cheering for you. And then going into the background on these experts, the one guy from California who was in his family business and he had really no expertise to speak on what he was supposed to be speaking on.
Well, people purport to be experts. Lawyers in general are afraid to challenge experts, and it takes more work. So with the expert from California, I was fortunate. I looked up other cases where he testified, contacted the prosecutors, and in one case, the defense lawyer, and said, "Can you give me the testimony?" And when I got the testimony, that's when you get into it. But it takes that extra step. When prosecutors rush to trial and don't take the time to do those things, there's a problem, because you always know in advance, both in civil and criminal cases, who the other side's experts are going to be. And you need to spend the time to be able to impeach them.
Yeah.
If they're impeachable, a really good expert is going to help you, but they're also going to hurt you, because if they're objective, they've got good things and bad things. So you always try and look at them from that dual perspective. What can I get from them that'll help me? And in that case, it was nothing, because I don't think they were objective or fair or expert. And then how can I dissuade the jury from believing what they're saying?
Yeah. The research that you conducted, the time that you took to dig into this is impressive. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, haven't been in court, but I can tell from other trial books that I've read, this doesn't happen as much as it should.
Well, I will tell you that in a prosecutor's office where I more recently worked, some prosecutors have hundreds of cases. Hundreds of cases. You can't do that. As a prosecutor, I had 32 jury trials in 2 years. That's a lot. That's a lot. But, and part of that reason was I was an arson prosecutor. Arson cases are circumstantial, and defense lawyers tend to feel that circumstantial cases, you can't win. And I think it's almost the opposite. What we know more and more is that direct testimony, eyewitness testimony, is flawed. Very flawed. Not intentionally so, but it's so flawed that the circumstances, when you put them together, the building blocks, I think make stronger cases. I hope I'll always do that in terms of the research to get ready to be able to do something with witnesses. It's important.
Very. You became an arson prosecutor. I had never heard of an arson prosecutor. Maybe I just didn't realize it was more common than I thought. How does one go about becoming an arson prosecutor?
Well, I applied to the prosecutor's office, and I believe they were considering me for one of the more management positions. Frankly, I don't love being a manager. I like being in the trenches. That's just me. Even now, 47 years out, I still want to be a trial lawyer. And anyway, I guess I projected that during the conversation. And when I was an insurance defense lawyer, I defended cases. There were a lot of restaurants that got burned down for the insurance money. And I had started doing those cases. So I had some familiarity with it. And that was in my background. And so they said, we'll make you a chief, but it'll be chief arson prosecutor. And I said, great. But when murder cases came my way, they were also allowing me to do those cases. So arson murder cases were rarely thought to be provable unless the arsonists burned themselves up in the fire or something like that. And I wanted to prove to them that, oh, yes, you can. if you do a thorough investigation.
Well, you certainly did.
The team matters and how you work with the team, certainly. But yeah, I can tell you this, that prosecutors that don't want to go out and see things and do things, you can't do it from the seat of your chair. You need to go and see and feel it. As you could tell, I needed to see the scene. I needed to see the neighborhood, to measure the distances in my mind. Yeah, I think those things are really important.
The size of Matthew's bedroom. You said it was small, but then you went to the house. Thank goodness those people were cooperative. You said it's not big enough to be a closet, but he got 2 feet into that room, going to be the big hero, and retreated.
I had never seen a smaller little tiny bedroom, and it looked to me like it could have been a converted closet, but it was probably, the house wasn't huge. But yes, I was shocked when I don't know, I'm not great at measurements, but I couldn't believe it. I mean, I thought you could reach in the door and come darn close.
Yep, to touching the next wall.
Exactly, to touching the next wall. It just was tiny.
And then, well, thank you, Bruce, tracking down the possible origin of his idea that the baby monitor caught fire.
Yes, that.
Oh my God.
You know, I kept wondering, who on earth, now look, my kids were young. I'd had baby monitors. I'd never worried about them. I never even thought about it. You know, you used them. When that was going to be the defense, I went, holy cow, who would think of that? Who on earth? And then Bruce, my mom's, husband, mentioned having seen it. It was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? How fascinating. And that was just, so sometimes luck plays a role in finding evidence. We know this. If Bruce hadn't thought of it, I couldn't have tracked it down.
Yep. And that's when I felt the curse was lifting, where the tide started to turn. I mean, I knew you were going to win, but I knew that you were going to win.
I'm glad you knew. I wasn't sure.
And I understand that as well, too, because you are presenting something that just seems so impossible. Like, who would do this? Who would do this? I was glad they did not let the testimony in about the baby monitor that did catch fire. Yes. The judge did not let that in.
The Jerry monitor. And yes, as I said, I shopped a lot at Once Upon a Child. Once Upon a Child is a child's resale store. And when I went into my store, there was the Jerry monitor. And the difference, of course, was the source of the electric power, which was at the wall unit on the brand that we were involved with, and was internal to the actual monitor on the Jerry. And that's how it was able to catch fire. And hopefully, I mean, there have been warnings, and it's one of the things about going to thrift stores, which, by the way, is one of my very favorite hobbies. Be going when we're done today. But watching out for whether or not something can be dangerous. Not all that many Jerry's caught fire, but still, it just takes one. And so, yeah, that was pretty interesting. I was telling somebody the other day that because I applied for a job once and they said, do you have any experience in this? And I said, well, no, but throughout my career as a trial lawyer, you have to become expert in different things. And by the time of that trial, I became expert. At one point, the judge said to me, because she had a baby, are you sure that this one is safe? And I said, yes, I've tested them. And that just struck me because, I learned a lot about them. And the model that was in that house, that lawyer was very helpful to me, the lawyer for the manufacturer who provided me samples and engineering drawings and whatever we needed.
Yeah, I felt like I became an electrical engineer, just reading through the descriptions of all of this, it was incredible. The difference between the two models, the transformer, the step down, the whole thing. It was just, to me, it was absolutely fascinating.
Before that, I didn't know why you've got something with a little bump in it that you plug into the wall. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting.
I want to ask you about your first book.
16 Minutes was my first book.
Oh, I thought Inconvenience Gone was your first.
No, 16 Minutes was published by another publisher first, under a different name, and it was my first book. And then I wrote Inconvenience Gone, which is unfortunately another case where the mother was accused of killing her son.
Broke my heart.
It was so nice of you to read it. Oh my gosh.
Oh. Well, when I pick a book, I don't just pick a book. I mean, I dive into, the work. But if there's even two books on two different cases, I go in and read it. That poor little boy left alone for a week. 4-year-old Brandon Sims.
Yes.
What? What did you think was going to happen there? And then, nobody noticed either and seemed to care. I'm like, oh.
There were people that cared, but she prevented them access. And we'll have to talk about that one. And I will tell you, for your future reading, I'm in the middle of writing another one about another murder case. It will take me a while because I work full time.
Is Van B back?
No, unfortunately, Van B is not back. And neither is my nemesis in Inconvenience Gone. He's the investigating officer in Inconvenience Gone. He's such a funny character.
I understand. Definitely going to be looking for book 3.
Thank you. Like I said, it's going to take a while. And what's very interesting as I read them, and of course, the first thing I do to start is get the transcript from the Court of Appeal. Prosecutors can't keep these things. So,
right.
But once a case is finalized, the Court of Appeals will send it to you. And then I reread it. And as I'm rereading my transcript, I'm going, why couldn't you have said this better? Or how come you didn't do this? Or can you speak English? So as I'm reading this transcript again, I'm beating up myself anyway.
Oh, no.
The cases were fascinating and they stick with me and stuck with me. And I wanted to share them because, like baby Matthew, deserves to be remembered. And the hardest thing for me, a person who was helping me edit 16 Minutes, insisted that I go and see the cemetery where baby Matthew was buried. And I mean, a prosecutor never does that kind of stuff, but I did. And it made me so sad. It was horrible. So anyway.
Do you know what? Actually, because I have those photos, what really made me sad was that it was so dirty.
Yes. Nobody had cleaned it off. It was a child area of the cemetery, and the other gravestones had teddy bears or flowers. They were spotless. And this, I didn't want to pull the weeds off. I did after I took the pictures because I couldn't stand it. But it was very clear that nobody ever visited. Ever.
No.
How horrible.
Listen, people grieve in their own way, but that tore at my heart. Thank you for writing the book so people know that Matthew Dean Wise did exist on the face of the earth.
Well, thank you for reading it and telling your people about it because it's really about them and the heroes like Van Buskirk who won't let it go. And, I have issues with law enforcement and I have issues with some of the stuff that we see that they've done and that they're doing. But among that, there's some really good people, just like there's some really cruddy lawyers. But among them, hopefully there's some people with real heart and concern. And I think it's about them too.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah, as much as we talk about the bad guys, I really do try to focus this around the good guys and the victims. Diane, this has been delightful. Is there anything else you want to add that you did not get a chance to say? I'm glad you talked about new book coming up and we got to talk about previous book, but anything else you want to add?
Like I said, I'm very, very appreciative that, one, I get to know you because I like you a lot and I'm going to come visit you sometime in Pennsylvania, and you can come visit if you come to Florida. No, I really wrote the books intending for people to just know about these children that were killed. And the third book is about a double amputee World War II and Korea veteran who was a hero who was killed. And I think that we need to think about the victims, and we need to realize in this age where, and I was director of a project that tried to determine whether people were falsely convicted. So I think you know that from my resume. But that there are people who absolutely deserve to be in prison forever, in my opinion, forever, and who do really terrible things. And the police who investigate them work really hard and care. So all that matters. But that's it. I don't have anything else. I've got no sales pitch. I'm terrible.
I actually did want to ask you about one thing. You had a death penalty case.
Yes.
What was that about? Because I tried to research it and it was hard to find anything other than it's in Georgia.
Okay. So the defendant's name was Jesse May Whittaker. All right. It was the first trial I was ever involved in. And Jesse May Whittaker was a prisoner at the Georgia State Prison at Reedsville, Georgia. This is when Governor Maddox was the governor of Georgia, and they used racial tensions to control inmates. There had been white on black and then black on white murders in the prison. In this instance, it was black on white. Jesse May Whittaker was a black man who was also a homosexual. And the Atlanta magazine did an article about this particular prison riot, and they did a minute-to-minute scene. Jesse May Whittaker was a spokesperson for the black group, and so the prosecution prosecuted him under a theory of party to the crime, which is like co-conspirator or aiding and abetting and all of that. It was new at the time. And in Georgia, in 1978 and 9, the only discovery you got was right before trial, and you didn't get witness all of that. So I was working for my dad, and his investigator and I had worked in the prisons in prisoner legal counseling. So I spent a lot of time getting to know Jesse May, speaking to the inmates. Surprisingly, the family of one of the victims, who was a prison guard, was willing to talk to me. I mean, they were very nice country folks. Anyway, we went to try the case, and of course, nobody had ever seen a female lawyer in South Georgia, and I was it. We stayed at the same little motel, the Miami Motel, I'll never forget, as the prosecutors, because it was the only motel there. And we'd sit outside on lawn chairs with the prosecutors, and they would drink. I didn't drink, but my dad and them would drink. But what happened was my dad did the primary part of the case. He was asked to do it by ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center. It was a pro bono case. They sent a lawyer who was a labor lawyer for the government to try it with us. So there were 3 of us trying it. I'm a baby lawyer. I had just graduated less than a year earlier. And my dad had this big annual party in Atlanta. So he tried the whole case, And then he got in his little airplane and flew back to Atlanta. Well, the jury came in that night and found him guilty. And the judge said, we're starting the death penalty phase tomorrow. If your dad's not here, we're trying it anyway.
Oh, my God.
So the labor lawyer gets up to talk the next day, and the man couldn't put a sentence together. And the judge calls me up and says, either you try this case or I'm holding your dad in contempt.
Uh-oh.
So I did the death penalty phase, and I'll never forget the night I spent before I started, because I knew that he hadn't killed anybody, thinking, what if he gets the death penalty? Anyway, so I tried the case. I certainly made a couple mistakes. I let a witness go before I wanted a couple things. But anyway, he did not get the death penalty. But it was horrifying. It was horrifying.
Oh, yeah.
But you can look at the appeals case, or I can send it to you. It's State of Georgia versus Jesse May Whittaker. It's only the appellate decision which affirms his conviction. He did not get the death penalty. Thank goodness.
Good. Good job. I have no
Terrifying job. I don't know if I did a good job. I never looked at that transcript, but I'm grateful. I couldn't have lived.
Well, your dad must have been proud of you.
You know, my dad's an interesting character in himself. So, but I'm sure he was, but I wasn't very happy with him for leaving me there. And when the ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center found out that I was trying the death penalty case, now remember, this was the first death penalty case that had been tried. You know, there'd been a halt in death penalty cases.
Right.
And there were several other inmates who were being charged with the death penalty, depending on how this outcome was. So Al Horn, who's this huge 6'4" big man with a beard and this deep voice, who I was always terrified of. As I'm doing my first witness, I see he's standing in the back. I really wanted to go say, hey, you want to do this? But he's just watching me. But anyway, that was it. So I didn't have the right to be afraid of anything after that.
No, you did not, and I don't think you were.
You know, years in, I asked my dad, I was trying a murder case and he was defending a death penalty case. And I called him up and I said, Dad, is there ever a time when the night before trial I won't have my butterflies in my stomach and everything else? And he said, I don't know. I'll let you know if it ever happens.
Exactly.
I mean, exactly. So it's the way it is. Yeah. Jesse May Whittaker. I'll never forget that. So how many years ago was that? 47. You don't forget some things.
Thank you so much for sharing the story. I had to know what happened because it was just this little tease in the book. And I'm like, okay.
I've got the case somewhere. I'll send it to you.
Please.
I'll send you the
I'd
Court
love
of Appeals decision. Yeah. I will. It's great talking to you.
Thank you so much. Oh, this has just been wonderful conversation. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Thank you, gal. Take care. I'm going to go thrift store. I'll see you soon.
Go to the thrift store. I'll talk to you soon. You begin. I'm going to email you right now. All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Murder Bookies, we really got into everything. Oh, my gosh. The mistrials, her career path, being a woman attorney and dealing with people thinking you're just a woman attorney instead of a competent attorney. That bit about the death penalty case, I really wondered about that. I'm so glad we got to talk about that. She is a remarkable woman. I can't wait for the third book. I will certainly keep you posted. Now, all of you murder bookies know how much it means to me to honor the victims and remember their names. Well, this time it is time to set the record straight on a notorious case. Our next book is The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper, by Hallie Rubenhold, a fantastic choice made by my Patreon murder bookies. Now, while Jack the Ripper is often viewed as almost a mythic figure who terrorized Whitechapel, London in 1888, his victims, Mary Ann Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Liz Stride, Catherine Kate Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly deserve to have their stories told beyond labeling them as prostitutes and victims. These women came from diverse backgrounds all across London, Wales, and beyond. They were writers, coffee house owners, and more, challenging that one-dimensional narrative. Hallie Rubenhold's gripping account gives them back their voices, and I will kick off this new series in 2 weeks, so subscribe so you do not miss it. Don't forget to use my code, MurderShelf, one word, lowercase letters, when you buy your CrimeCon Denver badge, and save yourself 10%. Thank you for listening. I see you as you hear me, and always trust your gut. Now, some of you have asked how you can help me grow the podcast, so introduce your family and friends. Now, as always, my sources, crime scene photos, maps, recipes, drink selections, they're all on my blog at www.murdershelfbookclub.com, April 2025. Contact me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com or find me on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. See you in 2 weeks, Murder Bookies. Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.